And thank you all for being here. I'm really honored to present our research on behalf of our research unit at University of Ottawa. Unfortunately, Dr. Stephanie Chitpin and Dr. Raymond LeBlanc cannot be here today. So the title of our topic of our research is Becoming Canadian, examining the lived experiences of recent adult Chinese immigrants to Canada. So firstly, I want to say we are using gerunds, becoming and examining here to symbolize the ongoing process of negotiation from our participants, and also to symbolize that we need to constantly refine our knowledge in this field. Thus, we're using both gerunds here in the title, and at the same time, here adults, we are referring to immigrants who are 18 years old, and they came to Canada after 2010. So that was the word recent, and we are very happy to present some of the preliminary finding of our research later. So the general background of our research and the introduction of our research is really the political and cultural and linguistic landscape here in Canada. So as a very popular destination for immigrants, Canada hosts many immigrants from all over the world. And Chinese immigrants are among one of the largest group. According to the 2016 census, I think the numbers might vary, but on average, about 4 to 5% of total Canadian population are actually with Chinese background. So that is to say, Chinese immigrants, they constitute a very important part of the population in Canada. This research field, Chinese immigrants in Canada, is an emerging research field. Because it is emerging because there are many new scholars doing research in this field. For example, our second presenter, Xue, later, she will also present her research on the same field. And it's also emerging because we don't have a lot of extensive research in this field. So that's why we're hoping that by sharing the voices from our participants, we're really contributing our knowing of citizenship from immigrants' perspective. And the third general background here is really about the problematic nature of this topic of Chinese immigrants' integration in Canada. It is problematic because on the one hand, through our interactions with our participants, as well as the as well as our research process, we come to realize that actually Chinese immigrants express their willingness to be integrated into the Canadian society. But the thing is, on the other hand, the general public would consider a lot of Chinese immigrants as like unfamiliar, or even in some extreme cases, for example, the historical background in Canada, Chinese immigrants are considered as a population that is hard or difficult to be assimilated into. And again, that's very problematic. I will briefly touch about the historical background later as well. So the research question for our research, really the overarching question is, in what ways do lived experiences of recent Chinese immigrants inform or supplement our current understanding of citizenship education for adult immigrants? So as you can see, we are really situating our research in the broader domain of citizenship education. And there are some specific questions we ask here. Because of time, I will not go in depth in all the research questions we ask here. Because Chinese immigration in Canada is actually can be dated back way before. So we need to briefly touch upon the historical background of Chinese immigration in Canada. So the Canadian Pacific Railway CPR project was considered as the first project that brought a large wave of immigration from China. And right after that, the head text, which was imposed by Chinese Immigration Act in 1885, another Chinese Immigration Act created in 1923 further banned any Chinese to immigrate to Canada. So things got better in the 70s, last century, especially in 1967, a point ranking system was introduced. So this makes it impossible to challenge the decision as to who can be immigrated to Canada from a legal perspective. And we are witnessing Chinese immigration to Canada, a large wave currently. And this current wave of Chinese migration to Canada are primarily from mainland China. And it's in accordance with increasingly more Chinese international students. So I myself is actually an example of this wave of immigration. Because we situate our research in the domain of citizenship education, it's very crucial for us to critically define citizenship education. We use the justice-oriented citizenship framework by Wertheimer and Kane. So we define citizenship education as not only teaches facts about a nation state, it also aims to empower students to understand their relationships with the environment and the people around them. And citizenship education also entails individuals' abilities to pinpoint the root causes of many environmental and societal problems that we face and to find according solutions to make the world more just and democratic. To connect immigration with the whole society, we introduce the notion of acculturation. According to Berry, acculturation pertains to the set of cultural and psychological changes that follow the contact between two cultural groups and their members. And many scholars, for example, Norton Pierce, Gardner, and Schumann, they review the connection between acculturation and second language education, which I'll briefly talk about the LINK program as an example later. And further, Berry developed a four-fold acculturation profile: assimilation, integration, separation, and marginalization. There are some subcategories under each acculturation profile, which I'm not going to go in depth, but all the acculturation profile actually pertains to the power dynamics between the different culture, especially the culture from the immigrants, as well as the culture of the host society. Integration is considered as the most desirable acculturation profile because in this acculturation profile, immigrants would stay close to both their home culture as well as the culture from the host society. And multiculturalism, although it's another problematic topic, is being considered as an example of the integration profile. However, one of the multiculturalism, critical multiculturalism, is probably the most desirable one because it challenges dominant powers to remove barriers of inequality that discriminate against one cultural group and enhance the privilege of another. And multiculturalism and bilingualism coexist in the landscape, political landscape here in Canada. It is problematic because multiculturalism encourages immigrants to stay close to both their home culture as well as the culture of the host society, Canada. However, bilingualism, on the other hand, seems to imply that there are some dominant cultures and languages in the Canadian society. So this is actually one of the major criticisms by scholars, for example, Dr. Douglas Fleming at University of Ottawa, the criticism he gave to multiculturalism in Canada. And additionally, for Quebecers, they believe multiculturalism undermines or devalues the position of French and French culture in Canada. And for Indigenous population, they believe multiculturalism does very little to help with their land claims and other claims. So the current citizenship education for new immigrants in Canada is represented by the program LINK, a language instruction for newcomers to Canada, and CLIC is the French version of it. The thing here we want to highlight is that citizenship content in the LINK program is actually not that much. And especially because LINK is considered as a program that has a dual purposes. One is for language instruction, another is actually regarding citizenship content. So we think this is problematic, and that's why we are trying to get our participants sharing regarding those topics to see how they perceive about those language instruction program and the citizenship education program for new immigrants in Canada. The two theoretic frameworks that we used, first one is the full acculturation framework, as I mentioned earlier, and another one is critical race theory. So really, we want to examine the position of race and racism in the lived experiences of recent Chinese immigrants to Canada, because critical race theory really value the voices from the underrepresented population. This also justifies our methodology of narrative inquiry. So narrative inquiry centralizes the role of experiences in shaping how we come to know. And narrative inquiry also attends to the complex relationships and negotiations from the participants. So in this way, it really echoes with what we want to do in this research. And the writing of narratives justifies individuals' own meaning making. Our participants are primarily from mainland China because, like I said, the current immigration, the current wave of Chinese immigration to Canada is actually primarily from mainland China. So that's why we select our participants mostly from mainland China. We recruit 6 participants from the Greater Toronto area and Greater Montreal area. The reason being both regions host a large group of Chinese immigrants and Chinese population. And we recruit our participants through social network forums among Chinese communities. So our data collection, data analysis contains, first of all, 2 rounds of semi-structured interviews, and we give the option for our participants to be interviewed both in English or Chinese based on their own choice. And then the interview guide of this question research is actually in accordance with the 4 specific research questions we asked earlier. Then we transcribe, translate, and code the data. That's the first round of coding. And then we write the research text and invite participants to attend to this process, to co-construct the narratives that we write for them. And then we use thematic analysis as a second round of data analysis. And we also attend to the 2 theoretic frameworks when we interpret the data. So here are some preliminary findings that we have found in the research process so far. As a matter of fact, we recently in March, we finished the data collection period. So we're still interpreting all the data, analyzing the data, and so here are some preliminary findings. Actually, we find that all our participants actually showcased different criteria for at least 2 or sometimes even 3 acculturation profiles, as we have mentioned earlier. However, 2 of them can be classified as integration profile. 3 of them have some feature of integration plus another acculturation profile. And one of them is actually in the marginalization acculturation profile, which means the individual is only close to the home culture, which is in this case, the culture in mainland China. And another major finding is that all our participants actually express their willingness to integrate into Canadian society. And we also want to highlight racism and stereotypes in Chinese immigrants' life, and it's very prevalent during COVID-19 pandemic. And the proficiency in one of the official languages in Canada, and it's in every connection with Chinese immigrants' understanding of their relationship with Canada. If they have higher proficiency, they tend to have more exposure to the Canadian society and everything. They all express their wishful thinking towards Canadian multiculturalism, because it really safeguards their rights and other relating themes. And we also find that recent Chinese immigrants showcase their invaluable experiential knowledge on many topics, such as job market, bilingualism, housing market, healthcare system, and even education system here in Canada, and many more. And we attend to ethics issues, and we believe the foreseeable limitation of our study is really about the sample size and the subjectivity when we translate the data. And the possible contributions that we see from this study is really to include our participants' voices into this emerging field of citizenship education for new immigrants. So that's some of the selected reference for our study. And I really appreciate you being here, listening to my presentation, and thank you very much for your time.